Welcome to the best of first-person episodes from Phantoms and Monsters. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of all future uploads.
The Tall Shadow. I heard your Ouija board experience on Arcane Radio yesterday. I had something happen while I was studying at college back about 12 years ago. My college friends and I would sometimes got bored in our spare time. We often spoke about what it would be like to try a Ouija board. I had read many bad accounts, but we were curious. I have always believed that there was some kind of life after death, and that spirits moved among us. One evening one of my friends came into Student Union carrying an old Ouija board. He said that he had bought it at a second-hand shop in town. There were 5 of us, so we decided to use one of the old study rooms in my dorm. We closed all the doors and turned off all the lights. We sat around a small wooden game table and laid the board facing me. I had never done this before and was a bit hesitant. The others encouraged me. They were hesitant as well. We all placed our fingertips on the planchette while I asked if any spirit was with us, to let its presence be known to us. I continued this for another 15 minutes. Nothing happened. We all assumed that this was a waste of time, so we pushed the board aside and decided to go to my room to play video games. We thought nothing had happened. But I must have caused something to enter in the room and into our lives. Since that night I have never felt the same. I am constantly filled with fear and trepidation. Several years on I moved away with my boyfriend and his young daughter. I always feel like I'm being watched in my apartment. One late night I was on my way to the kitchen, and as I walked out of my dining room doorway, there was a tall shadow-like figure standing in front of me. There was no face, nothing to look at. There was just a heavy black outline of something that wasn't human, but stood on 2 legs. Not knowing what to do, I said excuse me, and it actually moved out of my way. Since that night, my boyfriend's 5-year-old daughter complains about monsters in her bedroom, and occasionally screams in her sleep. It's starting to freak us out. The fear I have had since that night with the Ouija board is so much worse than before. I don't know what this is or what it means, but I am scared to be alone, and I can't carry on like this. For some reason, I know deep inside that the Ouija board is responsible for the shadow figure and the other things being seen. Janice.
Shadow people, poltergeists, or demons? My experiences took place in the early 80s in Toronto, Canada, and just like the fellow writing of his experiences on your site, mine also took place in a very old house. The house then was at least 75 years old and has since been razed to the ground and a brand new structure built in its place. When my family moved in there, we experienced the same sort of events, arguments, abusive situations, strange phenomena, but not to the point where we all noticed it right away. In fact, my younger brother was a skeptic up to the point where things began happening to him as well. I think he took this attitude to allay the fears he must have had. Our father moved out of the house after the first year and away to another part of the country, so just the 3 of us were left. At one point we had family come and live with us before they too departed. My experiences began with an event I will never forget when I was 16. It was summer and I had difficulty sleeping. This went on for 1 month approximately. Then one night I had fallen into a light sleep when I was violently awakened. I recall hearing a sound that I thought was an explosion and thinking that our stove must have exploded in the kitchen below me. I opened my eyes and looked around the room in the darkness, but saw nothing to indicate anything was happening. Suddenly my bed began to shake violently up and down, and it felt as though I was being electrocuted through my solar plexus. I couldn't move, but I could see my feet moving as the bed was jumping up and down. Some objects rose up off my dresser and shot towards the bed. I thought they would hit me as they approached with such speed. In fact, they stopped suddenly and began to swirl around in a counterclockwise direction above me, and from the center of the swirl, a bright white light appeared, and some voices which were like high-pitched shrieks or nails on a blackboard, said quite clearly, "The message we bring is to tell the people he is still alive." And then everything stopped suddenly. I was terrified and basically thought I would end up in a nut house. I remember shaking from fear so much I could barely get out of bed. I made my way to my mom's room to tell her about it, at which point she assured me I was having nightmares. "Say your prayers and go back to sleep," she said. I returned to my room after an hour or more, but I couldn't sleep. It was a long time before I could sleep there. In fact, the next event happened the following January. I was coming home very late one night and decided to take the shortcut through the alleyway by our street. I passed a parked van with windows all around, and I saw movement in the van, which made me feel somehow by its shape, size and response, that it was Doberman someone had left outside in their van. I kept walking, but the thought pestered me that someone should leave their dog out at midwinter in the night. So I went back to the van cautiously peering in, but there was nothing at all. Not even a cushion or anything hanging from the ceiling. Okay, I thought, I guess I imagined it. I happily kept walking home, and when I was in the alley I suddenly heard footsteps behind me in the snow. I got a little freaked out, and when I turned my head I didn't see anyone there. As I got to the end of the alleyway and turned onto my street, I looked back to the entrance to see if anyone was following me. What I saw shocked and terrified me. There was a streetlight right at the corner, and in the pool of its light was standing this enormous creature. It was at least 8 feet tall and huge. What struck me was that its form was completely black, there were no reflective surfaces on it whatsoever. In fact, the light was shining directly on it, and it seemed to absorb that light. It had large things on its head which I took to be horns or ears, and its fingers ended in points like claws, and the feet as well. Its eyes were red completely and staring right at me. I don't think my feet touched the ground, I ran so fast. After that experience I had a few others with the same creature. Another night I came home late again, and I fell onto my bed after shutting the door just wanting to fall asleep. My cat was in the bed with me when we both heard a voice laughing in the room. A masculine voice. My cat freaked out and ran to the door, scratching and meowing loudly to get out. I opened the door and she took off. I just didn't want to believe anything was in there with me, so I pointedly turned my back to the rest of the room and went to sleep. Another night I turned over and opened my eyes early in the morning, and there was the same creature, smaller though, standing in front of my closet staring at me. I recall I got really mad and told it to F off and turned around and went back to sleep. Meanwhile, my brother had seen the exact same creature, but his had yellow eyes. He confided the story to me years later when we had left the house and had no knowledge of my experiences. He told me he had awakened early one morning and found that he had left the light on in his room. Thinking that he should get up and turn it off, he turned onto his back and opened his eyes, and there, sitting on his bed's headboard, was the same creature, talons on feet and hands, completely black with no reflective surfaces, but was, he said, about 4 feet tall and squatting on the headboard, staring at him with yellow eyes. He said he was terrified and decided not to turn off the light after all. I don't remember if he said it vanished quickly or if he shut his eyes and when he opened them it was gone. He said he never saw it again, but had other strange experiences in that house. One day we decided that we should trade rooms. So I moved all my stuff out to his room and vice versa. I teased him and said he'd have to share my room with a visitor, but he was disbelieving. After I had moved to his room I had my last experience in that house that was in the shadow people realm. I woke up one night to a sound in my room like rustling. I was wide awake because I thought it might be a mouse. I switched on my lamp and looked toward the other end of the room, but seeing and hearing nothing I lay down again with the light still on. I turned to look at the clock and saw that it was 2:20 a.m. Then I saw these 2 large globes of light beyond my nightstand. I was frozen up on one elbow because I had been about to turn out my light again. They moved in a way that reminded me of balloons falling. The larger of the 2 was golden yellow in color, and the smaller was blue. They looked like spheres lit from within and emanating a misty light from their forms. I somehow could sense that they were intelligent. They knew that I was looking at them and they wanted me to see. The larger golden one floated almost majestically to the door, whereupon it flattened to a pancake shape in under half a second and slipped under the door. The second smaller one followed along and did the same. I was very nervous and scared at that point, but only because I had to go to the bathroom, and this meant I had to go out into the hallway where they had vanished to. Our hallway was very dark and without a proper light as the house was old and not renovated very well. I waited for as long as I could, which was about 15 minutes, and then I cautiously opened my door and went. The hallway was pitch black, so my plan was to inch my way to the bathroom with my back to the wall, so nothing could sneak up on me, and once I got there I could turn on the bathroom light to illuminate the hallway. I followed my plan through, and as it turned out, when I turned on the bathroom light, it shone down onto the stairs and the first landing. In the light were two shadow people. I've only ever thought of them that way because there was no other way to describe them. They looked like shadows, only they were in the light. They didn't look like the other creatures I had seen. In fact, they looked like people in the sense that they had a head and arms and legs and torso and hands. They threw up their hands as though in surprise, like I'd caught them unexpectedly, and then they flew down the stairs without a sound. It took me a long time to come out of that bathroom, as I didn't want to encounter any of these things again. Unlike your other poster, these creatures never touched me, at least to my knowledge, and never tried to hurt me. Although they did scare the dickens out of me. I recall telling these stories to people years later in other parts of the world, and hearing similar tales, and wondering just what they could be. Somehow we don't seem that much closer to knowing. I would conjecture, though, that as is the case with plant and insect life here, we certainly haven't got all the facts in yet. Perhaps these creatures share the world we live in, but in a different way, and we have learned to ignore them or pretend they don't exist. Maybe they are trying to tell us they do exist. Perhaps, like us, there are those with good intentions and those with not so good intentions. It's my opinion that we are getting closer to the truth every day. Sincerely, Pima.
This is Lon Strickler. If you like this program, it would help us if you would give it a thumbs up. Then subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notification when we upload new first-person encounters. We have many more to come very soon. And by the way, if you have a suggestion or an experience of your own, please leave a comment.